And welcome into this edition of ACAP Today for the week of January 30th, 2023. I'm Jason Parent with the Aroostook County Action Program. On this week's edition of ACAP Today, we're going to talk about immunizations, why they're important, what the state of immunizations is now in the world today, and specifically talking about immunizations for young children as ACAP operates programs across Aroostook County with early care and education. We're going to pick up that conversation with our Health and Safety Manager here, Mattie, at Aroostook County Action Program in just a moment. But before we do that, we're first going to get to the news and information that you can use again for the week of the 30th of January, 2023. And we begin in the news segment this week with this. This is the week for the forums that we have been talking about here across Aroostook County, where we will be discussing COVID-19 testing in rural communities, a very timely topic given our conversation today with Mattie in just a little bit. We do want to hear from all people. Those who do participate in one of the three focus group studies will receive a $30 gift card. That's everyone who participates in them will receive a $30 gift card. They are this week on February 1st at ACAP's Fort Kent office at 40 Alfalfa Avenue. That's at 10 a.m. February 1st. At our Presque Isle location, our main customer service center location at 771 Main Street, right near Walmart. That's at 2 o'clock on the 1st of February. And then lastly, in Houlton at the 91 Military Street office that we have there in Houlton, that's on the 2nd at 10 in the morning. If you want to register for these sessions, please go to COVID Study or email covidstudy@maine.edu or call 780-5620. Up next, as we've been mentioning and was our main topic of conversation last week, it is tax season, and we are inviting folks who have a household income of $58,000 or less in 2022 to consider applying to have your taxes done for free through the Aroostook Cash Coalition. Appointments will be available in Fort Kent, Houlton, and Presque Isle. You can call us here at ACAP at 764-3721 to schedule an appointment. We're scheduling for all three locations, so just call that number and designate which location you would like to register for. This is the Aroostook Cash Coalition's effort, as sponsored by the County Federal Credit Union in partnership with ACAP, New Ventures Maine, the United Way of Aroostook, and a number of other partners as well. So we encourage you to register to have your taxes done if you qualify for this program for free. The Cinderella Project of Maine is returning to Aroostook County. This is where we offer new and used prom dresses available free of charge to young ladies looking to go to the prom or even pageant season here in Aroostook County. The event takes place at the third floor of 480 Main Street in Presque Isle, which, for those of you who are wondering, 480 Main Street is the former Key Bank building right in the heart at the corner of State and Main Street in Presque Isle, the current location of Vision Care of Maine. We will be up on the third floor with this project. The project is a collaboration of ACAP with our sister CAP, Waldo Community Action Partnership. So mark your calendars for the 4th and 9th of March, and the 10th and 11th of March. We'll be offering Cinderella Project of Maine here in Aroostook County, and we encourage, again, ladies in particular, to join us for this particular event. Youth of all ages that might be interested in pageant dresses as well are certainly invited. We also want to remind folks with the high cost of energy that the Home Energy Assistance Program is a resource for many folks. The income guidelines are there on your screen. If your household size at that income is right around there, maybe a little bit over, please do give us a call and still schedule an appointment, as oftentimes we're able to look at deductions from other expenditures that will help you get within those income guidelines. But please do not sit on the sidelines, especially with the cost of fuel. Give us a call, 768-3053, and schedule your appointment today. Power Match program, we've been talking about this for a while too. It's still going. So if you want to have your donation matched to help friends and neighbors with electric bill assistance this winter, you can certainly go online to the acap-me.org site under Get Involved and Donate and select the Power Match, and your gift to this program will be doubled thanks to our friends at Versant Power. Maine's Workforce Collaborative continues to offer virtual sessions via Zoom on various things, topics that include employment and training program information, interviewing tips and tricks, making career choices, resume cover letter development, and much more. ACAP is part of this, and some of our team members help teach these classes as well as others across the state through the Workforce Collaborative Partnership. We encourage you, if you're looking to upskill in the workforce or get into the workforce in the coming weeks or months, that these are wonderful resources at free of charge for you to connect with. Community cupboards are in fact located across Aroostook County, including the one seen here at ACAP's main location, main customer service center at 771 Main Street in Presque Isle. We also invite you to look on our website or to visit one of these community cupboards. A number of them have the Aroostook County Food Resource Guide printed in them. It can be found on the news and publications page of the ACAP website as well. We are also welcoming community groups, families, businesses to help us stock the cupboard every month. If you would like to be the sponsor for the cupboard every month, $500 will get your name on the cupboard for the month, and our appreciation for helping us to be able to purchase non-perishable items to put in the cupboard. You can also adopt it in and have your family, friends, coworkers provide non-perishable food items and take turns stuffing the community cupboard at that. Right next to the community cupboard is the community closet at our 771 Main Street Presque Isle location. This is available like the community cupboard to anyone in need 24/7. Folks can also drop off. It works under the give what you can, take what you need principle. You can drop items off 24/7 or pick items up 24/7. We do ask if you're dropping items off, and we especially appreciate warm clothing items during the winter months, such as coats seen here in this picture. We encourage you to drop those off if you are during regular business hours from 8 to 5 inside of the ACAP facility, as they manage the clothing that goes in and out of the closet to help ensure that it stays neat and tidy, and we have a rotating stock that goes out. We are also reminding folks that if you're looking to dispose of unwanted or unused prescription medications or drugs, you can do that at any Aroostook County Police Department. You can also do it at select pharmacies. There's a link on ACAP's prevention and wellness page that will show you where those are. And you can also contact your local police station to find out when you can do that. And in our COVID-19 vaccine and test reminder, we are reminding folks that we are encouraging vaccination, and we're going to be talking about that with Mattie in just a moment. But you can go to the maine.gov/COVID-19/vaccine site to find out where there are appointments nearby you. And you can also go online at covidtest.gov and covidtest.gov to get your free tests sent to your address. They'll mail them right to you, and they have recycled those so that if you've ordered in the past, you can order again. There's also the accesscovidtest.org site where Maine residents can get monthly allocations of COVID tests. And you can also pick them up right now at an ACAP location near you. And finally, if there's something that we are talking about or haven't talked about, I should say, that you are in need of assistance with, we are encouraging you to reach out to an ACAP navigator. We have folks that know what the resources are available, not only within our agency, but with other partner agencies in the community. And it's a great time to reach out to them and find out what we might be able to help connect you with if you are in need of something, especially if we have not mentioned it here. Again, that's this week's news and information that you can use, again, for the week of January 30th, 2023. I'm so pleased to welcome ACAP's Health and Safety Manager, who I didn't realize is making her maiden voyage on ACAP today, because I had just assumed that you had been on before, Mattie. But Mattie, you welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me here today.
All right, so we're going to be talking about vaccinations. There's a lot of talk about vaccinations at this time of year in particular, and in the fall as we're heading into a new cold and flu season. And then, of course, everybody is talking about the COVID-19 vaccines and the changes that are happening with that. So why don't you help ground us, first of all, about your role here within the agency and how vaccine and encouraging and helping folks get connected with vaccines is part of that work.
Sure. So my role at the early care education right now is to make sure our children at our centers are fully vaccinated and get their immunizations done within the first 30 days, at the time they're entering our center, so that's one. But more importantly, to encourage not only to our staff member, but the children and families to be aware of what's going on with our flu season. Actually started a little bit earlier, late last year, because as you may notice, the RSV has been starting a little bit earlier. It's supposed to be October all the way through to March, but we got into the point where our county got hit pretty hard earlier last year, even before the season truly started off, and we're starting to see more cases of RSV. That let alone is really taking us off guard, because we have been dealing with COVID the whole entire time, and then all of a sudden we have this RSV. So it make it a little bit more challenging for a lot of children actually got sick, not only due to COVID, sometimes it's just purely upper respiratory problems. So to emphasize the importance of immunization when it comes to the vaccinations for flu season that we're talking about, it is extremely important for families and our community to be aware of that. If there is an opportunity to get your flu shot, please go get your flu shot, just to be more on the preventive side. And that will minimize, even just if we get the flu, let's say we get it, we can minimize the symptoms. So that is right now, our focus is to minimize that spread and also encourage the preventive measure, which is the vaccination.
Now, Mattie, we've talked about, and a lot of people here publicly, obviously, about the yearly influenza vaccine. And then, of course, there's the COVID-19 vaccine. And I know that they've been talking, at government levels lately about maybe instituting a COVID-19 vaccine that would be similar to an influenza vaccine, where they'd sort of track the progress of the virus and issue a different vaccine every fall, like they do with the flu vaccine. You mentioned RSV, though, just so parents understand, is there a vaccine for RSV at this point?
Unfortunately, we don't have RSV vaccination. That's why it makes it a little bit more challenging. It's because we don't have one. Influenza, as we know, seasonal flu, you can see it even at some of the local retail pharmacies. They do provide flu shots, but that's nothing for RSV as of right now. Even if you look at CDC, they really very vocal on how can we prevent the spread, because we don't necessarily have a vaccination for RSV. And so, yeah, I don't know when we will have a vaccination for RSV, but at this point, all we know that is to keep our centers, when it comes to, sanitation, disinfection on the stuff that we use, the common areas, we want to keep everything clean. As the way we have been doing for the COVID period, we still do our best in each classroom to make sure our areas are being cleaned periodically, regularly, and to do a preventive measure. But yes, flu season, definitely, if we can get the flu shots for the children. Although flu shots, the vaccinations are not necessarily required according to our requirement for our state licensing here at our centers, but definitely we always encourage our children to get flu shots as well.
Yes, so we talk about the influenza, or we've talked about COVID-19, and just acknowledge that there isn't an RSV vaccine at this time. But there's a lot more to it. And for parents who are familiar and who have sort of helped shepherd their children through the childhood vaccinations, talk about what that looks like, I guess, leading up to the point where children usually are engaged with the school system, or in our case, with our Head Start program or childcare even. What are some of those vaccines that aren't necessarily being talked about so much in the media these days and on the tip of everyone's tongue, but are very much necessary vaccines for children today?
Sure, we do have a list of requirements. Actually, per our state licensing requirement, our children must be vaccinated, have the immunizations. And the common ones, as you may think of, polio, hepatitis A, and hepatitis B. Although most parents will be aware of hepatitis A and hepatitis B are not necessarily required in the public school. However, the rest of the immunizations are actually required before they're ready to go into the public school. So the polio, it's the one big one, MMR, which is important because not too long ago in another state, there was actually an outbreak for measles. So MMR is very important for the kids to have as a part of the requirement. And, you know, there are what we call the IPV, which is the polio. We have the Hep A, Hep B, and then we also have the what was lost train of thought. There are a couple others that also are required besides the MMR, which we have the set time between, you know, the day that they were born, a child was born, we have the set time frame that this child has to go through multiple immunizations for that specific immunization requirement. So depending on the time of the child that has to enter into our center, we have to follow that. And of course, what we do is to make sure we help the families to follow up on those scheduled appointments. If they don't have the appointments, we'll help them to set up the immunizations, the required immunizations, to meet with their providers to make sure their kids are really getting that set up and to be up to date with the vaccinations.
Mattie, what do you hear from parents of young children? I think folks sometimes, express concern about vaccinations, about things that they may have heard, things of that nature. What are people saying across the spectrum, from parents who are concerned to parents who are really very positive and proactive about getting their children vaccinated?
I think the one big one will be some of the parents are very proactive in terms of getting their children ready, and before they will get sick, they will see that immunizations is important, especially during the flu season, but also all other required vaccinations. For some parents, they are very proactive and they truly be on top of it and get all those vaccinations done even before they come to our center, which is great because, again, it's going back to the preventive approach. We want to make sure the children are really ready before the children get contracted with whatever viral infection or even bacterial infection. So I think that with that mindset, that truly help us to facilitate, to ensure our requirements for each child to be ready ahead of time. And at times, because some of the parents are not necessarily coming from Aroostook County or even from the state of Maine, and some of the families who are coming from our state to come to our county to settle down and have a family here. And what they don't know is that there's some other rules are not necessarily the same compared to some other state. So that will be another conversation that we have to have with those families to make them aware of the certain things that we do require in the state of Maine. So I think that when parents are more aware of the importance and the effectiveness, having the vaccinations done ahead of time, truly able to help prevent or mitigate the symptoms, right? So when we have symptoms, you can have sneezing, coughs, and some other common symptoms you will find in common cold, flu, RSV, and even COVID. They actually overlap a lot of symptoms. If you look at them, the general symptoms are very similar. So when you have those vaccinations, that definitely the chances are you will have lessen of the symptoms. And that will shorten the time, even for when we talk about recovery time for a child. So
that's information I think that folks need to know. So vaccinations and requirements for vaccinations in this country vary from state to state, Mattie?
Yes, sometimes it does, especially since September 1st, 2021, in state of Maine, we actually remove 2 exemptions. So basically, what we used to have when a child coming to our center, we used to be able to allow our parents to communicate to us to say, we don't necessarily believe in vaccination, or because of the religious belief, they have the option to be able to waive the vaccination. But since September 1st, 2021, the state of Maine has removed those 2 exemptions. We only allow to have exemption for medical reason for a child not to have immunization. So that's a big piece which truly affects some of the families who are not aware of the change that we are continuously providing that piece of information, so to make them aware that we have made that change by the state law. So to have that piece of conversation is important, because there's some other states still provide those other two exemptions for them to say, we don't really need to do that with our child, which they have the options to do it in their own state, but once they arrive in state of Maine, it's very different. So yes, and so we are doing our best to have that first conversation with our parents. When they decide to come to our center, we immediately provide those important pieces of information so that they have the expectation what they need to get done with their child, throughout the whole process, and spending the wonderful time and have a great learning experience at our centers.
And Mattie, I know that you've worked with us for a relatively short period of time, but are you seeing sort of changes in how parents are approaching this and the concept of vaccination with what we've sort of seen in society in recent years in terms of the polarization around specifically vaccination for the COVID-19 virus?
I think because of the COVID, the duration of the COVID, and the information piece of like what vaccination can do for us, I think that piece of educational information when it comes to the COVID vaccinations truly extend that concept and be more familiar to most of us. And so I think when it comes to this specific topic, because we're exposed to COVID and getting COVID vaccination is such a big thing and it's an important step that we all would want to promote and continue to promote. And therefore, to talk about other required vaccinations become a little bit easier conversation to have it with our families, because they're exposed to this whole pandemic for a long time, to the point where they will be more receptive, so to speak, to see that the importance and the effectiveness of immunization. I think that we all know that just because we have vaccination doesn't mean that you are completely immune from getting that specific viral infection, but definitely it can minimize the effect, the impact on that person. So that makes it a little bit easier to have a conversation when it comes to general immunization requirement at our center, yes.
And are you able to have those conversations with parents with your understanding to help them have a better understanding as well as their healthcare provider?
I think one thing I want to say that our health assistants and our administrative assistants at our centers have been doing some fantastic job when it comes to communicating with the families and also providers, and work together to be the advocate for our families and our children to be able to create a more, I would call it harmonious partnership. Because after all, we are working with these community agencies and providers to make sure our children are being taken care of and get the vaccination. I think that our health assistants and administrative assistants have been really creating a good, really conversation, and that dynamic. I would say this, without these folks, these amazing coworkers to be able to do that and connect with our providers, I think that some of the families won't necessarily be able to do it all by themselves. So I think that not necessarily coming from me, but really coming from what I'm seeing, what being done in terms of planning, scheduling, explanation, the communication back and forth, whether it's through email or even phone calls, we truly closing the gap when it comes to this particular part. When we talk about immunization, we've done some fantastic job at each location. We have great help. I think that as a newly coming on board to be a health and safety manager, they really done a fantastic job and build up that relationship, the rapport that truly help my work a little bit easier, so to speak. Yeah.
I'm certain that there are parents who must, question some of the vaccinations that children are required to receive. I mean, when we talk about COVID-19, it's still very much in our everyday life. But when you talk about things like, smallpox and measles and polio, things that you've taught that maybe even their parents didn't experience in their generation, sort of thinking about it as their grandparents' disease. What do you say to folks in that regard who are saying, gosh, why do I need to get my child vaccinated against something that hasn't really been prevalent in our society and in our culture for generations at this point?
I think each generation, we all went through different types of, not so much of a pandemic, but different illnesses, being developed throughout the years. In each generation, we all have different types of immunizations. Obviously, I've got mine, when I was little, and doesn't mean that this younger generation have to go through the exactly same series of immunizations. However, to look at, in general, our health, overall, we talk about not only about immunizations, hopefully I'm not going off the topic, but even talk about allergies, food allergies. We didn't develop that type of food allergies in my generation when I was younger. Until recent years, we're starting to see more other things being developed. So our environment and our food intake and everything else, creating a different environment where we have to be proactively to provide some other additional, perhaps, requirement when it comes to immunization, just because this generation will be more prone to certain type of illnesses and diseases. So I think to explain that to families, they probably will be able to recall their own experience, personal experience, to see their kids and even their grandkids, they are encountering different type of health challenges and predisposed to certain type of things that we may not necessarily have to deal with, and now we're seeing it. So I think that to share that perspective on seeing the evolution in the last 50 years, so many things have been changed in the medical field and what we have found, and that is just something, it's ongoing changes. And I can see even 10 years from now, there could be some other things coming up, and who's going to expect we're going to have a COVID pandemic to think about that. And so I think that to be ready for other upcoming changes or unexpected unknown changes when it comes to health and preventive health, I think that this is the one important thing I am very adamant about promoting, the prevention, like the preventive measure. How can we do better to get ready so that we are healthy enough? Something happened, we're ready, we won't necessarily get too sick. And right now, the problem is the COVID, especially when we talk about COVID babies, during the last couple of years, those children were born during this time frame. They don't necessarily have a certain acquired immunity because of the, we stay home, we're trying to isolate. And so these children now have to encounter the RSV, which happen to be what we call a triple demic. That's the new term, right? Because we talk about RSV, COVID, influenza A. These three are right now is still pretty actively in our environment, in our county. So we notice that children are not only getting one, but could be two out of these three at any given time, which hit them even harder for their body to recover from it. And more so, if you look at how kids are getting into the point where they trying to recover and then they cannot, and they run into a complication because of the upper respiratory problem, you see more kids will run into pneumonia, ear infections, sinusitis, because of the RSV were prone to attack those regions. And then now you have additional flu, another type of flu. So to see how our younger generation is being affected by these illnesses, then we know that there are certain aspects of like adding additional immunizations to these children's requirement of coming to school in general. It makes sense. It just, I think that unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it put us into a different perspective to really see there can be something unexpected, and there could be something new in the upcoming future. We don't know. And we know that COVID is going to be around us. It won't just go away. We kind of, in generally speaking, we kind of acknowledge that it's going to be one of those flus, then we're going to get this. But how can we move forward to prevent it, to make us stronger and be ready so that we have the immunity to fight. I think that will be, I don't think it will be a stretch to explain to our community or our families to be able to see that, because I think a lot of us are seeing that changes are happening. How can we mitigate that and minimize the spread, and then making sure we have the ability to fight? That requires immunization. I think that will be one big one that I will see, that it is easier for people to understand that piece when it comes to immunization.
So what, Mattie, as we want to wrap this up, what haven't we mentioned, what haven't you mentioned that you wanted to make sure folks got from this conversation that we're having?
Go get the shots, get the flu shots. Any children, older than 6 months old, I mean, pretty much you can get ahead of the curve. That's what I call get ahead of the curve. Do what you can do when it comes to immunization. Get the vaccination, right? Get the immunizations done ahead of time. And that's the one way to do it. I'm not saying this is the only way, but that's definitely, this is a big step for us as a community, because this is not just about our centers or ACAP. This is actually about our county as a whole community. We have a vulnerable groups, not talking about just the children, but the elderly. So this is a bigger picture for us as a community to be able to see that immunizations not only talk about the children, but also our seniors, given the fact that we have a lot of seniors, a high population of seniors up here. So we want to see the bigger picture. Get your immunization, not only do it for yourself, but for your neighbors, for your community. And that will be the one thing I want to emphasize today.
Some sound advice from our health and safety manager here at ACAP. Mattie, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation and for joining me on this premiere edition for you of ACAP Today. We are appreciating having you as a guest, and I look forward to having you back sometime.
Okay, thank you. All
right. Before we leave you and before we leave everyone out there, we end as we do each week with our photo of the week. And this week, our photo of the week takes us to the state capitol. It takes us to Augusta, actually, where I had the opportunity to participate in a press conference event in the Hall of Flags, where we spoke both the public and private sector, government and nonprofit organizations, all speaking about heating resources, energy resources available to households across the state of Maine. Familiar faces there included Maine's Senate President Troy Jackson, who happens to serve on the ACAP Board of Directors, Dan Brennan, who is the Executive Director of Maine Housing, a partner of ACAP's that we work very closely with, as well as representatives from the congressional delegation and from private sector businesses who are all pitching in to help keep Mainers warm this winter. So that is our photo of the week, our snapshot of the week this week from the Hall of Flags in the Maine State Capitol. It was a wonderful event, and more importantly, the work that's happening across the state of Maine to help keep Mainers warm is what matters most. So we thank all of those who participated in that and all of those who do that work every day, including our fine team members here at ACAP. That's this week's edition of ACAP Today. We'll be back next week with a brand new edition, and we will see you then.